My name is Jack. I'm 34 years old, and I live in a small town in northern Minnesota. The winters here are long and harsh, and the forests around here are vast and silent. I work as a forester, so I'm used to solitude and know these places like the back of my hand. But the winter I want to tell you about is one I remember forever. It was 3 years ago, in January, when the snowstorm had been raging for days. I decided to go to an old hunting cabin that stood in the woods a few miles from town. It was my favorite place for solitude. Quiet, cozy, with a stove and a supply of firewood. I took everything I needed with me: food, a flashlight, a rifle in case I encountered a wild animal, and, of course, a thermos with hot coffee. The trip took a couple of hours, and by evening I was already there. The hut looked the same as it always did: small, with a slightly shriveled roof, but sturdy. I fired up the stove, cooked supper, and settled down with a book by the fire. A blizzard raged outside the window, but it was warm and cozy inside. I thought I would spend a couple of days here, rest from the hustle and bustle, and return home. But things didn't work out the way I planned. Around midnight, I heard a strange sound, like someone scratching at the door. At first I thought it was the wind or maybe a tree branch, but the sound came again, louder this time. I grabbed a flashlight and looked out the window. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the snow. The tracks led from the edge of the forest straight to the door of the cabin. But the strangest thing was that they stopped about a meter from the threshold, as if whoever had left them had simply disappeared. I said to myself that it must be a play of light and shadow. Maybe the snow was piled up in a strange way, or the lantern light was distorting the shadows. I tried to convince myself that everything was all right, but something inside me twitched. I locked the door and went back to the stove, but the feeling of unease persisted. Half an hour later, the scraping was repeated. This time, I took my rifle and went outside. The tracks were closer, almost to the porch. I looked around, but there was no one around. Just endless snow and a silence that pressed on my ears. I shouted, "Who's there?" But my answer was only an echo. Back in the cabin, I sat by the window, keeping my eyes on the dark forest. The footprints came again and again, each time closer. By morning, they were at my doorstep. I stayed up all night with my rifle at the ready. When dawn broke, I packed up and left in a hurry. The tracks in the snow were still visible, but now they led back into the woods. I never realized who or what had left them, but since then I have never gone to that cabin in the winter. After all, on a snowy night, even footprints can be a warning. I told this story to my friends, but they only laughed, saying that I must be overworked. Maybe they were right. Maybe it really was a play of light, wind, and my fatigue. But something inside of me still lingers. I often think about what might have happened if I had gone outside that night. Who or what could have left those footprints? Was it a real threat, or just a play of my imagination? I don't have the answer to these questions, but one thing I do know is that there is always something in the woods, especially in winter, that we can't explain. Since then, I've become more careful. Now I always take my walkie-talkie with me to keep in touch, and I try not to be alone for too long. The forest is a beautiful but dangerous place, and even the most experienced person can encounter something beyond their understanding. Thanks for listening to my story to the end, friend. If you liked it, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There are many more chilling stories ahead that will make you think about what lies behind the usual reality. Don't forget to click on the bell to not miss new videos. And if you have your own scary stories, write them to the post. Maybe your story will be the next one on this channel. Remember, the night always carries secrets, and sometimes even footprints in the snow can be the beginning of something frightening. Be careful, especially in the dark. See you later.